Welcome to New Game Plus. This is a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name is Kenny.
Coming to you live, Nolan.
And this is episode 346, and it is a Patreon poll!
Woo! Pull.
And last week, we weren't here.
What do you mean? Oh, yeah.
Well,
I mean, I existed.
Physically.
Yeah.
No, we stopped existing for a week, and some of our community members took over for Retro Recap 14.
Yes, and let me tell you.
14 of these.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I thought there'd be more. I'm not going to lie. That's kind of a low number. But they did so good, guys. I'm very proud of the Retro Recap crew. It was such a good episode. It was a really good recap. I love listening to those, even though I was present for the episodes, because they'll give us some of their feedback and opinions of what we got wrong, and I like it.
Retro recaps have always been fun because it's a break from the typical structure that we implement here on the show. And then recently it's become even more interesting for us three at least to listen to, because for all of our episodes, Kenny said this before, and we don't give him a pass on this. He's there. We're there for the episode, so why do we need to listen to it again?
Yeah,
it's not good. But there's something there. But for the retro recaps, we're not there during the recording, and so this last week, Garlisle, Clint, and Shauna recorded an incredible episode recapping our last our last 20 or so games and 20 or so episodes that we've done on the podcast. And it's cool to get a fresh take. It's cool for them to roast us. And it's cool, I guess, for them to talk about how good Need for Speed was when it really wasn't that good.
No, they are spot on, and y'all are wrong.
No, it's really fun having our own content to listen to that's like in our wheelhouse. We kind of like swap hats with everybody for a week.
It's like somebody else's podcast.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. And it also, we're peeling the curtain back here a little bit. It's also a kind of nice thing for us because every once in a while it gives us a strategic week off. Dustin, that allowed you to travel internationally. We don't need to talk about it long, but how was your trip? Just for everybody.
It was wonderful. I updated a few. I need to update just a little bit more in our VIP channel in Discord, but my wife and I were celebrating our 10-year anniversary. Went to Paris and didn't do anything gaming related, but it was nice.
Amazing. It looked pretty magical.
glad.
I'm not gonna lie, I was jealous.
It was so much fun. So thank you again, Garlisle, Clint, and Shauna, for being a part of that episode and giving us a week's rest. Before we get into the Patreon pool selected game, want to talk just briefly about The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. That's the title for Breath of the Wild 2. They haven't said it verbally, I don't think, so it might be Tears of the Kingdom. I don't think it is. I think it's Tears. But I think
that'd be dumb.
I think they might actually be hitting both without word, honestly, and we'll see some of that play out. But they've got to pick one when they say it, I think.
They might never say it.
I guess they might
they'll
not
say it in Japanese. Maybe we can just call it a Japanese name.
Nolan, I don't think you saw it. We got a trailer and a release date.
Oh my gosh, wait. Okay, you're about to tell me the release date, I hope. All this is news. Guys, it's PoE season. I'm sorry. I've been
disgusting.
I know, you're checked out from everything.
And I wasn't very hyped for Breath of the Wild 2 because y'all know my critiques of the first one, right? I'm a purist. I like the old school Zelda. But now that I'm thinking about returning to it, I would love to play another Breath of the Wild style game. So, when's it coming out?
And you know they heard all those critiques too. Like they might have changed some mechanics. So. We obviously haven't seen it, but there's chance for evolution here. They don't play around. This is Nintendo. They'll change things.
I just don't want breakable weapons. That's my only thing. Please let me keep my weapons.
I can't promise you that, but I can promise you new things and innovation, and that everyone's gonna love it.
Throwing a sword at a bokoblin and it breaking on his face is too funny to take out of the game.
He didn't hear it because he was talking. March
what?
This next March. The coming March from where we are now.
Close.
Oh
I believe
my
it's May.
gosh.
I believe it's May.
Oh,
which
did I
is-
get the wrong M month?
They both start with M, so it doesn't matter. It's pretty much the same month anyways.
Yeah, but I would
That's-
hate myself if I got it wrong.
Nolan, I believe it's May 12th of 2023.
I can't believe they gave a date. That's crazy. I thought there'd be another
soon.
year.
And
That's so
soon.
Yeah, it's usually like 2024, right?
Kenny, are you still stuck on the March-May thing?
Yeah, I'm mad.
Get
I'm just
over
going to go to sleep for all of April to make up for it.
Listen,
Dude.
the trailer shows even a little bit of gameplay footage, so it's not even just like, here's a little bit of cutscenes. They give some gameplay footage. You're in the sky, but not exclusively. You've got a glider, it looks like a hobgoblin glider kind
Yeah,
of
that's
thing.
from the first one. Is there a new character?
No, a glider. Sorry, not a glider that you hold on to. A glider that you land on, like a flying thing.
Like actually Hobgoblin. Okay.
Yeah.
Like
and-
that character in Tailspin that I always thought was the coolest thing ever in the whole world back in the day.
Zordon. From you're thinking Zordon from Power
Rangers?
Rangers.
I'm not. There's lots of people that have been on gliders.
One last thing: the Master Sword they showed to be broken, or it's got there's some kind of corruption that's going on.
So
before.
they heard everybody's complaints about broken weapons
Nice.
and took the one weapon that can't break and were like, we're gonna break it even harder.
Hey, I'm excited about the story side because
Yeah.
I think that's what Breath of the Wild did really well from the previous games is that they went like a little harder on lore and emotion. And so I'm excited about what takes place in the next one.
It's gonna be great. And if you were to ask me if I could put my trust in Nintendo to ninja-near a great game for us, I could easily reply, Shuriken. Like in our retro game of the week, Goemon's Great Adventure.
Overview.
Big G's Great Adventure is a 2.5D platformer for the N64. I can name one other. We've played it. It's called Mischief Makers. And it was in the same style. I point that out because platformers on the N64 were not in abundance. I mean, Castlevania 64 was a platformer, but it was a very different kind of platformer. This one's a more traditional style, at least for the most part. And I was pleased to see that because I love this system and I love platformers.
Is 2.5D an actual thing in real life? Like, we've got three-dimensional objects in our world.
It's a 3D game that they have locked your perspective into a 2D plane, but they use the Z plane to interact with
math.
the player. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, math. Geometry?
Yeah,
Geometry.
I was going to make this reference later, but I think this is even more than 2.5D. I was going to say it's like
At some point.
2.87D because
I'll
they
give
actually
you that, I'll
because
let
they
you
actually
have that.
they do a lot of stuff that's
Yeah.
closer. Like you're not just stuck on the horizontal platformer. Like sometimes it's literally just a 2D
literally
platformer
3D.
with
That's
3D graphics
Yeah.
and that's it. But we get a lot of interactions, some of them that are actual 3D, some of them that like play with the 3D, some of them that move your plane a little bit around as you go and let you kind of come other way. But mostly you're doing a side to side platformer
Mostly this
with
is
a 3D
side-scroller-
twist.
Side-scroller
Yeah.
platformer with N64 graphics. Let's leave it at that for now. It was developed and published by our friends at Konami in 98 in Japan and 99 in the States. It stars a blue-haired ninja boy named Goemon, titular,
Big G.
titular,
Titular Big G.
titular Big G, and has him platforming through various stages using a pipe and coins to destroy baddies. The story is bonkers. Okay.
Everything about the story, the dialogue, the humor is insanity.
It's insanity,
Yeah.
and I love it. Kenny, you love it. I know
It's
you
so over the top.
do. It's set in not feudal Japan,
Edo era Japan.
Edo era Japan. That's right, yeah. And okay. This is not the first Goemon game. I will point that out. Firstly, I believe that they had departed. There have been a few games. They had departed from the original style of side-scroller, and with this game, funny enough, in the 3D era, they were returning to the side-scrolling platforming. So there's lore here, lore if you want to call it that. The characters are what exist in this world, and I think that's what a lot of people love about it. So you begin with, you are Goemon, and your friend Ibisumaru are going to see Wise Man, all recurring characters. They're new to me, new to us. Wise Man has built a machine that brings back people. Hold on. It brings back people from the dead. It's not a time machine. I thought it was a time machine. It is, of course, taken over by Ibisumaru's descendant, not James Dean, but Bismaru.
Which that's actual humor in the game.
That's
so,
an actual
not
reference.
just saying something random.
There's also a Marilyn Monroe reference in that same sentence. Okay, Bismaru unleashes a horde of monsters and ghosts in service of her lover, I think, Dookie, the like demon lord. And you and your friends, Sasuke and Yae, also join the fray later. Must go through these different worlds and stop that from happening. All the nonsense with a machine that brings back people from the dead.
Yeah, you're missing important elements though, because this game also has Power Ranger elements.
It's not important.
It's so important. Like
Maybe.
You went a little bit over the top, but this game is way over the top.
And it knows it.
In everything it does.
I'll say
it
that.
does.
It's not like
it's self-aware.
It's very, very self-aware with the James Dean. And when you see Ibisumaru, the way he looks, it's an even funnier joke. He's the most ridiculous looking little like chibi character. They're the chibi style characters, right?
But just know that this game, from the graphics to the story to the characters to what's happening, everything is just absurd, intentionally absurd.
Yeah.
From start to finish. This game is bonkers.
Gameplay.
You're immediately presented with a character select screen, like before you even begin.
Yeah.
Right. That's big.
Big and unexpected.
With a 2-player option.
With a 2-player option, right?
Co-op,
so like
co-op.
you could immediately go on with couch co-op playing 2 different characters. But if you're playing solo like we did this week, you either are selecting the titular character Goemon, or you are playing as Ibisumaru, which you suggested. And later, like you mentioned, you get other party members as well. And so they each operate differently. They each have a different weapon, a different speed. The thing that's nice with Goemon, I think he's probably the easier one to use. He's got a double jump if you time it correctly, and that makes your platforming a lot easier. But they all operate slightly different. And you can switch them, or you get your selection at the beginning of the game, but then throughout the game, you have many opportunities to switch the characters in the middle of stages sometimes.
That's what I really love about this game, is that it doesn't lock you in. So many of those games that say, they present an option to you of other characters, you're locked in like your whole playthrough. But this one, you're able to play a little bit of all of them. And the fact that it's co-op, but in a like beat 'em up co-op style, like where you're both just like set loose on the same like stage, like that's great. That is definitely very, very different, not only for the time but for the console.
Was there any particular of those characters of the squad that you gravitated to, that you enjoyed the most?
Yeah, I enjoyed one of them more for his theme than I did for his actual playstyle. And then Yae. Or is it the one that has the kunais? Like really small, really fast ponytail. I think it's Yae.
So isn't that Sasuke?
Okay, then Sasuke.
I don't know which one it is.
Maybe. I forget which character
You
is
can
which.
play her later. Really fast character. It's my playstyle in a lot of games. And so she
Has
was
the
like,
little knives that she throws when
kunais.
she's full health? Oh, yeah.
Like I really like her speed. So that was my favorite like play style. But I mean, Ibisumaru, like the ground pound, dude. It's just and the noises that he makes. Smile the whole. I know that's all Kenny played. He doesn't even have to answer.
He's hilarious, but he was obnoxious to play.
He's kind of clunky to play. I think Goemon's the best all around, obviously. But like, anyways.
At least the easiest for us, for beginners.
For sure.
I stuck with Big G. That's what Kenny did. I'm assuming.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked some of the other characters, and I definitely played the small one the second most.
Yeah,
same.
Girl, I really only took when I needed to turn her into a mermaid, which is a thing, and not surprising. Like, we're going to say some wild things,
Right.
and they're probably mild relative to what's actually going on in this game.
And we're not often going to explain it because the game doesn't.
The game doesn't.
There's no need for explanation. It's just this is how it is.
Right. You're just a mermaid with a bazooka. Okay.
One of the things that I caught early on, and Nolan, I think you even caught it in your first play. You did.
Yeah.
There's a day and night cycle.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What platforming game has a day and night cycle? And the things that I think that it alters is the music, and we'll talk about some of that later, and some of the enemies that are coming out. Those are the two things.
Yeah.
It also, I guess it also functions to like allow certain, I'm going to do this in quotations, side quests at times or missions in certain areas.
Yeah.
But you've got a day-night cycle that's just going as you're platforming throughout the stage.
Yeah, and they use it, which is cool. I can't name another one. You said what platform is that? I don't know. There might be one, but it's in other games. But the fact that they were like, yeah, let's put one in, is really cool. If for no other reason besides the puzzle part or like the side areas that you can like use for it, the fact that the vibe of the stage changes. You mentioned music, but just like enemies, like just some of the environment, the way it looks, is so refreshing. It just makes the stage feel better. I don't know how else to put it. I just really enjoyed that was in there because they didn't have to do that. Like the stage functioned just fine without
a totally optional thing, but it added a kind of cool dynamic. You're right, both to your just platforming and to some of your kind of story elements that we'll get into at some point as well.
Well, I mean, speaking of story elements, and other platformers do this, but there are some stages that are not your typical stage. So they're more towns, villages that you are visiting. You're even like you've got your home village and your actual home that you can go to. That's a fairly expansive village where you can visit an inn and get your health back, or you can go to a restaurant and get some items for strength, or you can do these little mini quests so that you can get new entry passes. And we'll talk about entry passes. I'll just say right here, you get entry passes from defeating stages, from completing mini quests, from talking to certain characters, and you need a certain amount of those to be able to access later stages throughout the game. So
it's the progression. It's the progression mechanic in the game.
Progression system. I felt like those areas, the villages, were such a unique thing. Did y'all like it? What were your feelings towards that?
I want to call it a hub world, but it's not. It's not a hub world. It's just not. Side areas. But that's kind of going back to Kenny and I were discussing about the 2.5D thing. That's where it unlocks you, and it's just kind of straight up a 3D game at that point, like a perspective. You're not locked into your 2D plane, so you can explore a little bit. In fact, in the first play, the first area is one of those areas. You're in Wise Man's house, and I was like, this isn't 2.5D, and it's not a platformer. What's going on? But I loved them placed throughout because it's just different, and I like variety.
And you get so much variety in this game. Not only are you getting towns versus levels, you're getting replayability on levels with various puzzles and these quests that you're given as part of your villages. You're given characters to replay and like various extra modes, as well as boss encounters and these mech fights, which are both huge mechanics we got to talk about because, of course, in a Japanese game that goes way over the top, you're going to have giant mechs.
First-person mech fights, yeah.
To battle in them in a first-person perspective that actually kind of works with special moves and power-ups and actually interesting interactions and like patterns you got to learn. What? It could be its own game on its own, and they threw it in there as bonus content.
Yeah. What you have to eventually tell yourself as you play this game is why not? So when I came across the first mech fight and it was first person and actually good, I said, of course that's in this game, and
why not?
Enjoyed it because again, the variety is next level to the point of lunacy. I mean, with what's going on, the enemies, and just the overall driving story, it's insane. But what you get from that is, and I want to talk about stages, you get an excellent variety. You've got your water worlds, your water stages, but they're really good. You've got your like jungle areas. There's just really solid stage variety, and I love that about this because again, it could have been a little more cookie cutter. They could have gone the simple route and just kind of stayed in the same like tone, like the Edo era tone, and they do the whole time with the enemies and stuff, but like the actual stages themselves are so charming.
Yeah, even those stages, the layout, like beyond the charm and like the look of them,
they have fun.
You're going this way, you're going that way. You've got multiple paths you can take where you're up and down. You've got hidden stuff that you're exploring for. The stage design itself, a good variety of enemies, feels not static at all, and that's hard to do in a platformer. It really is.
Did y'all have a
feels
favorite
so fresh
area, like world or stage?
I loved the first tower at the end of the first area that is set on fire, and you're having to like get up to the top to your first mech battle. You see your mech there, but you have to get all the way to the top of the burning building to jump out onto your mech. That's story. And that's and there's flames and pieces of the building that are falling, meaning that you can platform in new areas. That felt good. It was massive. These stages are pretty big often for a platformer.
They have a solid length to them, yes.
But I really liked that one, and it felt really good.
Yeah, I like that one. I really like the volcano area where you're on big dinosaur bones and stuff like that. It just
that's sick.
That one was great.
So fun to be in.
Yeah, I can't even pick. Like, they were all good. What I like is the fact that there was variety and that there wasn't a standout. Like, that everything I did was enjoyable.
The Tortoise Island?
Yeah, hold on. Let's hold Kenny's feet to the fire. Give us one that you liked, Kenny. Yeah, no, we would like to know one.
You're gonna get my feet too close to the fire, and then I'm gonna take one red bar of damage. And if you do that 2 more times, I'm going to die.
Was that your segue into the HUD?
I don't know. This is me explaining another element of the game.
But then you eat some ice cream before that, and you're okay?
Yeah, like you can eat certain things that will, like, if you do lose all your health, it will still keep you alive, or you've got your typical, like, health items that you can do as well. In some ways, maybe it's not. I was going to say in some ways it's a standard platformer, but in other ways it's not. I don't know if it really is much of a standard platformer. It's a pretty unique one here.
I think that it is a standard platformer that they've disguised so well that it feels like
that's
its
probably good.
Own thing.
But not a simple platformer. If you're comparing it, I'm getting more like Donkey Kong Country vibes. With like the environment and the interactables and the changing of the areas and like different things that you can ride on, and then like extra balloons that are temporary health kind of being like your armor that you can pick up. I got lots of overlap there, and only because that's a great series, and this reminded me of the things they do there in so many ways.
I want to say 2 things in one. The enemy variety, I wasn't too impressed by. Sure, there's some differences, but they don't really operate much different. What I was impressed by was the occasional bosses that you face.
Yeah.
And we've already talked about mech battles, so that's one thing. And you're facing the same mech girl over and over, right? So
I think so.
I think so.
It's like a baby Bowser situation.
You get slightly different mechs at different points throughout.
Okay. Well, so I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your actual bosses. One in particular, just the skeleton boss that fills the whole screen on a bridge, that like is over the bridge, and its hand slams down, and it looks good. It feels good. That skeleton on the bridge boss was so amazing, and that was just one of them. I liked almost every single one of the boss designs, not only in the physical look, but in how it operated and how the battle took place.
That one
Me
in
too.
particular.
This one I can tell you I had a favorite. I loved the one where you're at the top of the flooded building and fighting that like mermaid thing with the fish head, and you're going around cutting ropes and stuff because of the like funny humorous moments where stuff's falling on its head and crushing it, and you're having to go back and forth and dodge, and I don't know, like it's a fun fight, but it also had me laughing so hard.
Yeah.
They're just really well done.
One other thing that I thought was really creative and fun, and that I came across in the first play, but like accidentally, we talked about your different how the characters have different abilities, but most of them are pretty straightforward. It's like you have an attack button basically, and they have different like weapons. There's a mechanic. Goemon can throw an object, but it's currency. It's coins that you're collecting.
It's your
which
coins
in
that you're collecting.
most games, you're like, oh, cool. I'll rack up these. Maybe I'll use them later in a shop, or maybe it's just points. I accidentally threw one, and I was like, oh my goodness, the Z trigger shoots the currency I've been picking up, and that's funny.
I was so mad in your first play, Nolan, that it took you so long to discover that. It's because it was a really cool mechanic, and you didn't get it till the very end.
I know.
But you were too busy.
Yeah.
You're too busy playing gymnastics on those stupid bars that have the. There
I
are a
got
few
used to
bad things about this game.
Well, hold on.
That's not often in the game, though.
No.
Hold
I thought it
on.
was
Those bars, I do understand how they would be frustrating at first, but once you figure out the mechanic, it's super easy. But I understand that it's a little bit different. But I was able to avoid, I guess, the pain of, for those listening, there are these swinging bars that you have to get your momentum moving around it. And then all you have to do after that is hold the direction and press release and take your finger off release to grab the next pole. Yeah. And you have to do that a few times for some of the platforming. Nolan struggled to figure that out in the first play. I didn't have to struggle because you struggled for me, and I got to learn it from you.
I walked so you could swing?
No, I did the same thing. It's not intuitive, and I ended up just skipping it until later when you had to learn it.
There's more coins up there. There's nothing
Kenny
up there.
Does. Of course Kenny
that's
does.
not... I see, when they introduce mechanics in the first stage, I'm thinking this is going to be in every stage. I better get good at it. That one's not in. It's in stages, but like it's not a core thing. Which I was. I was glad that it wasn't. But yeah,
it's just scattered throughout. Yeah.
Aged.
Nintendo 64.
Yes.
Don't say anything.
No.
But.
Oh, he's saying it negatively.
Oh, no, I'm saying it both. It's
a package. It's a Nintendo 64.
Yes. I literally said there's no real aging issues here in my mind, except for the things that are universal to the fact that it's a Nintendo 64.
Yes.
The look feels very Nintendo 64. It's also beautiful and well done, but it has that vibe that you can kind of tell the era and just feels a little dated. And again, not nearly as bad as some games, but with things like Z-Trigger, if you're not playing this on a Nintendo controller, it's going to just be a little clunky. This one's not bad like some games. Some games won't map, and I'm like, if you don't have it, don't even play it. This one is not that. But literally, it's a wonderful game, and my only complaint is it feels like when it is.
I don't remember specifically, but I think it was Mischief Makers, which Nolan, you already referenced at the top of this episode, that I don't feel like had mastered the controller well. There's a weird setup. I think it was like you had to use the C buttons primarily and maybe the D-pad. I don't remember.
You used the D-pad, which was a yes. The C buttons were implemented really weird, which was a meh.
But this one, I wrote down in my notes, there are some games on this console where the Nintendo 64 controller just feels so good. And this is one of them. I thought that it masterfully used the controller so that it just feels so... I get that it's a weird controller. I love it for its absurdity. And,
it's weird.
And there are some games that it doesn't feel right. And Kenny, like you mentioned, if you're not using an N64 to emulate some of these games, an N64 controller to emulate some of these games, it doesn't feel good. But when you've got it, and we all have it, it feels so good. And this is one of those games where having that controller in hand, it flows.
It does. It's natural, but part of me was like, well, they didn't really use all the buttons, and then you get to the mech fights, and you end up having to use the C buttons, like in your combos, but not in overbearing, annoying kinds of ways. And they do things like multi-button presses simultaneously being their own thing, but doing it on that A-B button where your thumb is just sitting there. Again, they just crafted the stuff you have to do so perfectly around that controller, and yeah, they didn't have to.
Yeah, I think with the N64 controller, what we run into a lot is the C button layout. What emulators, even what Nintendo has implemented in their emulators, is using modern consoles' second joystick as your up, down, left, right C buttons. I think it works for a lot of games, but a lot of them don't feel good because the N64 controller, they were right there next to A and B. It was your thumb. Yeah, it used the thumb.
It's
really
so
well.
different.
But yeah, I agree with you guys that this game is very straight to the point. They didn't. Yes, the controller's bonkers, like the game, but they didn't try to get really weird with it like some developers did. We're like, ooh, let's do something unique. No, it's a platformer and the controls work and it feels good. I like that a lot. Now, Kenny, the graphics. You said N64. I thought you were going to use that as an insult, the way you started with that. Yeah, I'm glad you say that because it looks great. And not even for the N64. It just looks great because they didn't try to do realistic faces. This even looks better than Ocarina of Time in some areas because you don't have to look at Link's face. Like, they're small characters with giant heads, so they can do more detail on the actual face. And the environments and the enemies and the way the ghosts animate out of them when you kill them, fantastic. It honestly, guys, I had to keep reminding myself this week that I wasn't playing on PlayStation 1 or some other console. It really felt different. It did not feel like N64 in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the graphics, they feel N64, but it's good. So you've got the polygons is what I'm basically saying.
Yes,
but
yes.
They implement it well. You're not looking at 007 face masks stretched over a box.
You just got to play DK mode, and it's fun.
So let's talk about the music then.
Please.
This is a game that integrated modern synthesizers and traditional Japanese instruments. However, there are a few key tracks that were left out of the North American and European releases. So I think that I'm reading right here that some of the one of the key songs and performances was cut from the North American and European release of the game, leaving the title screen silent and eliminating the impact battle preparation sequence. There's a few things there that are
interesting. That's why the menu's silent.
Right. It's just like, okay, nothing's happening.
I thought something was wrong.
So did I. The silent opening scene had me confused. I was checking settings and then it's fine. It was just silent. It was weird.
Okay. The soundtrack. Oh yeah, you had something more about the history?
Not the history. No, I'm not deep dive. I wanted to point out again that with the day-night change, so does the soundtrack change, which is cool.
Super cool. And it's been a long time on the podcast where I have a standout OST where I go, oh my gosh. I can't even name the last one. It's been a long time. There have been good music. And there's been a lot of fine and adequate music that I enjoyed but wouldn't return to. This soundtrack is so good. And we're talking N64 cart. We've got voice acting on there. It doesn't sound particularly amazing, but it's there, which was unique for the console. But the actual soundtrack, I used the Water Stage track in our N64 Relaxing playlist, not knowing the game. I had heard about it, but hadn't played it at the time. And I was like, this track is insane.
Yeah.
Sure enough, the rest of the game is fantastic. I wish there was a title track. It's probably really good.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a title track, but the rest of the music is good. Dude. Epic when it needs to be epic. Chill town theme when it needs to be chill town. But moving on from that, how fun would 2-player have been?
Man. So fun.
There's not many games where I would say that. I'd be like, no, single player experience is fine. 2-player would be novel. This wouldn't be novel. This would be game defining. We would have so much fun. I'd laugh if I was playing with either of you and either one of you were Bisumaru. Dude.
I would be, just so I could throw Japanese characters for you to jump off of all the time.
Oh my god.
I'm pretty sure this is it's the one where you would share the screen, you're working together. In the mech battles, it's a little bit different in that one player plays at a time, but you're able to throw a baton to the other mech on screen, and then they can take over at that point. Great. Yeah, so they really implemented 2-player well, not just as hey, you can also do this, but as a key way to play this game. And that would have made it a lot more fun too.
They need to add this to Switch Online. Was that in the list, you think? In the upcoming?
No.
What if they did? We would play it for sure. We'd play it.
Yeah,
we would.
I do think we missed out though. Sometimes we wonder if multiplayer is a defining thing that we need to talk about in Aged. I do. It's a great single-player experience. It really is, but I really wish I could have played co-op.
Right. It's one of those where you don't have to have the 2-player co-op. Like, you can still enjoy the entire experience with single player, but it could have certainly been elevated.
The fun ceiling would be higher with 2, yeah.
Yeah, with playing with a friend.
Yeah.
You mentioned it earlier. There's a lot of Goemon games, but only 5 have been released outside of Japan. So there's 1 on the Super Nintendo. There's 2 on the Game Boy. There's another one on the Nintendo 64 called Mystical Ninja Starring Goemon.
Yes.
And then there's this one. This one is known as Mystical Ninja 2 Starring Goemon, so I think this is the sequel to that first one on the N64.
We need a new one. I haven't played the other ones, but we need a Switch one.
I'm pretty sure they just went silent. Like, I don't think. Let me see when's the last one that's come out.
They
game.
They may start development though when they hear this episode. So
oh yeah, they listen.
Give it a few years, Nolan.
I said
It'll
our
come
friends
for
at
you.
Capcom for a reason. Yes, I mean,
so
Konami.
Yeah.
The last one released exclusively in Japan. By the way, like the last 10 were exclusively Japan. Was in 2005 on the Nintendo DS.
I get it. It's a very Japanese audience game.
Yeah, you are
very.
Right. Like, from humor to themes, it's very hey, this works in
the theme
one audience.
and especially the humor. Absolutely.
Well, because of its somewhat exclusivity and because of its, I guess, fan base, it's not a cheap game. If you want this cartridge for your Nintendo 64, it's going to cost you $115 used.
Brother.
Wow.
Or if you want it new and in packaging, it's only $1,115.
Yikes.
It's that Japan, like, it's not exclusive to Japan, but it's one of the only. That's why. It's because it's one of the only we got.
Go get you a copy.
I would love to have a
Go
new
pick
copy
it up.
of it. That's such a flex.
Send Nolan a copy.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Final thoughts.
At the end of each and every one of our episodes, we determine whether or not the game gets our vote for New Game Plus status, which is our general thumbs up or thumbs down. It does require 2/3 of the vote to swing one way or the other. For this Patreon pool submitted game by Dan, that we played for 2 weeks, by the way.
Yeah.
What would you say, N64 Nolan?
A quirky charmer on my favorite console ever. I had a good idea going into this that I would end up loving it purely based off the concept of a 2.5D platformer on this console. I really enjoyed Mischief Makers, and you know me, I love platformers, which I only usually get to deep dive into a like really good quality platformer on like SNES, sometimes PlayStation 1 and later. It just works. It just works here, and I'm shocked I wasn't exposed to it sooner. I remember the front of the game at Video Giant. I never rented it. I don't know why, but I should have played it, man. This would have been like a staple for me on this system, and the OST is slamming, and the humor is off the wall. It's actually funny. It's a must play for the N64 because of the unique genre alone, but because of all the other goodies you get with it. It's an NGP forever. I'd play it for 3 weeks.
Ooh, that's high praise coming from N64 boy over there. All right. And old man Kenny?
Old man
Yeah,
PC?
This one's actually an easy yes from me. The game is strange. Everything is over the top, but almost everything they do spot on. Like, they just nail it. There's tons of variety. Even the weird Japanese humor tone that might be a little off-putting for some people. Like, some people are going to like the game but maybe not appreciate the humor. That's self-aware, though, and not, like, too over the top, and you don't get so much of it that it's going to, like, be distracting. It's ridiculous and silly, but it's also fun, very, very playable, and just charming. So yeah, New Game Plus all the way.
Before you go, Dustin, on Kenny's note about the humor, it just occurred to me that they were probably like, all right, we got to release this in US. Like, they're not going to get it. Who's from the US? They were like, I don't know, James Dean and Marilyn Monroe. Just put their names in that joke.
I think we're
you're
right.
And we are.
Well, and we are. I agree with the boys. I think that Goemon probably hasn't been a huge, as far as I know, a huge success outside of Japan because of its like straight up overt Japanese setting, the unique Japanese humor, and I think they feel like, and we're probably right, that at a time it might have alienated a North American audience or a European audience. I don't know if that's true anymore. I think things have been a little bit more integrated in recent years. So if they were to revitalize the series, I think it would work in multiple contexts. So that's all I would have to add. I enjoyed it. It's fun. It's quirky. You need to try it out and experience it. It's a solid platformer alone, but if you add in all of these other things, it just makes it this unique experience to be had. And it's certainly fun to play on the N64. Get an N64 controller and enjoy this one for sure. Which means that Goemon's Great Adventure is New Game Plus certified. But what did you think? We had 259 votes on YouTube. 37% said yes, it's worth playing today. 4% said no, so it's low. And 59% probably live in North America or Europe and never played it before.
Wow. Okay.
It's fair.
I would think a little more and played it.
Yeah. And then we had a lot of people write in this week. We'll include a few of those thoughts here, starting with Clint. If I had to pick a 2.5D platformer for the N64, I'd probably still pick Kirby. That's not one we mentioned.
Sure. I wouldn't.
That said, Goemon is a wild experience that deserves to be had. Certainly not the best or most polished game on the console, but it's arguably one of the most unique, and I'm glad Dan's dream has finally come true.
Yeah, Dan's been submitting it for a while, huh? It's one of those.
Yeah, I actually wrote it here. He actually went back and found. Dan has been submitting this game to all Patreon and producer pools since June 21st of 2021, so well over a year.
Oh, wow. That's
nice.
Great. I'm glad we got to play it.
Paid off.
So I mentioned it last week, maybe the year before, but again, guys, this is just like the lottery, except it's not millions of dollars. It's just your game. It's going to happen at some point. So keep investing. Keep putting in your
Just
game.
like the lottery, it's going to happen at some point.
Absolutely, you're going to win it at some
stocks
point.
Are up.
Yes. All right. Now, Zothotep said, I had the game as a kid. From what I recall, I loved playing the game and found it to be an addictive and funny 2D platformer with an amazingly absurd game over screen. I also remember playing it a crap ton with my cousin. I never hit the game over screen. With my cousin, since it had multiplayer and multiple playable characters. I remember enjoying the levels and mini bosses like the skeleton on the bridge. That's what I said. Best. And the flaming castle stage. And I still those still stand out in my mind after all these years. Sadly, the game didn't save to the cart and instead saved to the N64 memory card, which was battery powered, which died on me before I finished the game. And being a child at the age of 6 or younger, I didn't realize was the problem that the problem was the cart, that it was busted. Oh, I thought it was the cart that was busted and I sold it. My greatest mistake.
That's actually like a lot of money.
I wish I still
1K.
I wish I still had the game, and definitely I think it deserves NGP status.
Those battery-powered memory cards were not okay. Everyone had corrupt data.
Everyone.
I also like his perspective as a kid. Like, hey, I got this broken thing. I better sell it to somebody.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Wait, what? That's scummy. Nice. Good job.
Garlisle said, somewhere between the fairly mediocre platforming mechanics, punishing yet bland stage design, and being required to go replay stages to get passes, I didn't want to return to this game this week. And that's a shame.
This?
Garlisle?
Shut up.
Who usually has the right takes.
Yeah, I know. Come on.
And that's a shame because the towns are so much fun to poke around in. All the characters and color of the franchise is on full display, and the co-op mechanics would definitely elevate the game. Yet somehow, I just wasn't having the fun I wanted.
This is big. That you just read that. What are you talking about, Garlisle? I thought you would love this.
That is super interesting because Garlisle, even when he has differing opinions than us, typically
he's always right.
He's always right. Garlisle's always right. So
he might be right more often than we are.
So maybe he's right here and we're wrong for some reason.
No, I think he knows
maybe
that his opinion is a little different on this game. I think he knows that he should.
Maybe, but this also might be one that once you've played and kind of appreciated it, that you may not want to go back to it.
Well, Okay, and maybe here's my entry into this. Maybe from his reaction this week, I don't think he had played the game, but I think he had other Goemon experience. Maybe he's coming from a Goemon experience that he loves and cherishes from an earlier time, and this one was so different that he didn't. That's my suggestion.
Or possibly he's just having a really, really bad week and took it out on the game.
Okay,
and go see a therapist or something. If so, that's cool.
We love you, Garlisle. We're gonna take a moment and pray for you, and have them. But we're here for you. And then finally, Dan, you've been submitting this game for a long time. We got to play it. Here's your commentary.
There you go.
Goemon's Great Adventure is not the best N64 game, but it is my favorite N64 game. It's one that sold pretty poorly in the US, and that's probably part of the reason we didn't get too many Goemon games in the West afterwards. This game has so much heart and charm. It's a B movie where everyone is self-aware. It's the Sharknado of video games. Is it rough around the edges? Absolutely. Does it show cut corners all over? Of course. This game had the budget of a tin box. You see it most in the enemy variety, which is pretty limited. That being said, the actual platforming, pretty solid. Not too many blind jumps or random things falling on you, albeit some. And the combat works great. Since there aren't too many 2.5D platformers on the N64, the choices basically boiled down to Mischief Makers, excellent but unconventional, Kirby, very easy, and Goemon, very hard. This is a challenging game that rewards your patience and perseverance. An absurdist journey through Edo-era Japan, complete with giant robot fights, demons, and a bad guy who wants to take over the world. Need I say more?
See, that's it. What was so refreshing about it was that it was so original. And there's gaming now is so cookie cutter, man. Like every game's the same. And so it's really nice to see something that is just somebody was like, I have this idea, it's crazy, let's do it.
Even some of these old games. I mean, we pump them out every single week, and there's weeks that we're like, we can't say anything about this game because it's just X other game, and then we have to try, and it's the same thing over and over again and nothing unique. This part of what was so refreshing here was just how wildly different everything about it was, and absurdist but refreshing.
Dan, thank you for submitting the game over and over again. Thank you for introducing it to us and the NGP community this week. But we are going to set it aside for now, and we are going to randomly select from our Retro Master List. Did you forget about that? We've got a Retro Master List with well over 1,000 games, and they're 15 years old or older from any console, any genre of choice. From that massive list, we are randomizing the game that we're going to be playing for the next 7 days, and it is a 2.5D.
You're lying.
Nope. Action fighting game.
Okay, that's different at least.
That came out in 1994 for the Sega Mega Drive / Genesis.
Oh no. Uh-oh.
Okay.
2.5D on the Genesis.
Yeah. Further, oh no. It was developed by PF Magic and published by Accolade.
PF Chang's?
It was developed by PF Chang's.
Okay, I like it.
And this company reused its graphic technology in their successful line of virtual pet titles called Pets, Dogs, Cats, and Oddballs. We are playing for the next 7 days a game called Balls.
No. Balls, dogs, cats. Come on.
It's called Balls with a Z, and the subtitle is The Battle of the Balls with an S.
No, I don't want to be a co-host on a podcast with you two with a game called Balls. I don't. I'm out next week. I don't want to put up with it.
Wait, so Kenny, you're saying you don't have what it takes to be with us and have an episode next week? You don't have the
what?
The what, Kenny?
Cojones.
With a Z?
Listen.
Cojones.
Next week there's going to be no references to anything like that. We're just playing we're just playing a 2.5D fighting game called Balls.
Battle of the Balls with an S?
The Battle of the Balls with an S! Find a copy and play it along with us this week.
if you have the balls, go to discord.gg/newgameplus and join our community. Let us know what you think about balls. Tell us what we got wrong about Goemon, and chat about different things.
Hey, thanks to all of you who support our podcast. After next week's episode, this list may be significantly smaller. We'll see. But currently, our list of producers is Adam, Marley, and Antonin, Ben, Brunt, Dan, DH, Bowser, Francesca, Gimbin, Jared, Joey, Jordan, J. Robert, Justin, Clint, Nick, Nat, Corey, Lawai86, Maximum, Mr. Latte, Seja, and Shauna, Thomas, Unbelievable, William, and Zion. We got a new producer as well to add to that list. So, Alex, thanks for joining that illustrious team. Also, big thanks to Phantom and Hot Tim Ollies for joining us as new patrons.
Thank you.
Appreciate your support, and we're thankful. And biggest news yet, this is the Mech Boss version of announcements.
Okay.
The Tasty Yogurt, just in time for an episode about balls, has become a director level supporter of New Game Plus. So
huge.
Thank you to the Tasty Yogurt. Can't wait to
Eat some?
get to know you, talk to you. Yeah, eat your yogurt. I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry, they canceled.
You can find us on our social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube's. The links are all in the show notes. Listen directly on any podcast provider of your choice. Subscribe so that you are the first to get new EGP episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a kind rating and review. Our video episode was edited by our friend Dan. Our video episode was edited by our friend Dylan. Our audio episode was edited by our friend Dan. Join us next week as we play balls. Until then...
Can't wait.
Until then, I'm still Usagi Yojimbo.
I'm still remembering to thank our normal directors, Bro Jim, Garlyle, and Shane.
Wow.
I'm balls.
That's very creative.
We know.
Nolan.
Thanks.
And this has been New Game Plus.